my name is Mike Bennett, professional drummer from New York. I'm trying to come up with some short drum lessons and start posting things more regularly. What I think is probably the most valuable lesson that I could come up with would be volume control and self-mixing. I do a lot of orchestra pits for community theater, and this kind of works for live bands and things like that too. More the self-mixing part. Volume control is worth something. When doing community theater stuff, you have different levels of projection from cast members. There are times when you can play out a little bit. You usually need to keep the volume at least under control. A lot of these places are small. A lot of these places are not using microphones and stuff. Some of them, when they are, they're really only looking to help the cast, not to have feedback and all kinds of craziness. So, in your practicing, try to practice quiet. The more you play quiet, the more you can maintain feel. Some things that I do use, and I've gotten to the point where I don't really have to use like alternative equipment. I'm usually just using regular drumsticks. I have a kind of soft touch. I limit the use of cymbals. The crashes and stuff are there, but they don't need to be loud. Another thing I'll do often in your Broadway productions, you might have a relatively simple part in a song where you're just doing. And if you're doing something like that, and you have a vocalist that isn't as strong as the others, I'll even do things as simple as drop out just the hi-hat hand. So you have one vocalist is singing, and then you have somebody else that's really quiet. And instead of losing the feel, I'm here, and I can just, and maybe the next line comes in and it's another vocalist. Volume control is a huge thing when it comes to that kind of work. So now on the topic of self-mixing, there's kind of three parts maybe. So you are, and this goes into the live, not totally amplified setting like theater, you want to mix yourself into the mix. A good way I look at it is if I can't hear what other musicians are doing, then I'm too loud. So it's part of the volume control thing. Now, another angle of self-mixing is you can play a little bit with the sound of your set. I'm recording with the iPhone, so the microphone of the iPhone should pick up cymbals a lot more than other things, similar to vocal mics on stage, which I'll get into. But just on a live scenario, there's a big difference between being light on the bass drum and being heavy on the bass drum, being light or heavy on the snare. I get into things with dynamics where, with your kick drum, there's playing a beat, and then there's using the kick drum as almost an additional tom. With a light in between toms, you can have, the Billie Jean fill. That's using the bass drum more like a tom. But, that groove changes tremendously if you're playing, it's heavy on the bass drum, light on the snare. You do more of a balance. Now, I'll use another example. if you overplay the cymbals on that, it changes it. And these are subtleties, but you can do this from song to song and have slightly different variations to your sound. The big thing that I teach in self-mixing is decreasing the volume of the cymbals when you have a sound person and things mic'd up and everything. The cymbals carry through your vocal mics and any other microphones that are on stage, even on the drum set. You can have close mic snare drum and it's picking up the hi-hat constantly. Not that you're not going to get quiet enough that you can gate it out. And a lot of soundmen aren't doing that at live gigs anyway. But the overhead mics, I would say most live gigs, if there's overhead mics for a drum set, the sound man is getting frustrated because 9 times out of 10, he's got those mics turned off. Because the cymbals are already coming through everything else on the kit, already coming through the vocal mics. He can't get the cymbals any quieter without turning the rest of the drum mics off. He can't turn off the vocal mics. I have had soundmen that have questioned what cymbals I'm using or how I'm doing things differently because they were actually able to go ahead and have a little bit of cymbals into the mix and be able to pan them out and sometimes they go mono, sometimes they go stereo, but depends on the venue. Being able to EQ things, because when they're killing the overhead mics, you're losing a lot of the tone from your kick drum and your toms because he can't have that destroying mix because of the cymbals. And those sounds don't carry through the vocal mics like cymbals do. And a little reference to this that I teach is if you pay any attention to Motown, that stuff was recorded in a live studio, and you'll notice that the Motown drummers almost never crash. If they were recording in that studio, if they crashed, they were usually doing it. I mean, they certainly weren't doing it at the beginning of every 4 bars. The typical, they don't crash. And as an example, if using the iPhone's microphone, that sound just carries into normal vocal range microphones. So I do find myself, when I'm playing gigs where I'm mic'd up and you have multiple vocal microphones because of background vocals and you don't have the ability to isolate things like in the studio, I find myself laying off the hi-hat a little and usually less crashes, and even like riding the cymbal bells. I mean, they work, I use them, but what sounds right is usually way too loud. And I'm going to kind of conduct a little experiment with the iPhone's microphone as part of this lesson. I'm just going to play normal for a moment, and then I'm going to play the way I do at a gig. So normal, do a little bit of hi-hat and then some crashes and over to the ride or something. Just the amount that those cymbals carry probably are resonating in that microphone more than it is in the room. The way I usually do it at a gig. actually curious if the difference is noticeable in the microphones for the iPhone. Yes, if you get practiced at that and you can comfortably not lose field, but just take the volume of cymbals down 30%, you'll probably feel and hear a huge difference in recordings of live gigs, and soundmen will be looking to understand what you're doing different. Give it a shot. If you find this helpful, if you like the information, please like, subscribe, comment. Tell me what you think. Thank you.